stateliest stately homes. The history of the Great House here goes back to the 14th century, and a lot of what you see in here is priceless. These 17th century tapestries are amongst the finest in the country. Some of the original Elizabethan interiors have survived, but most of what you see around you these days is the work of the Venetian architect Leone. The same family lived here, the Lee family, for 600 years. Would you want to move if you lived somewhere like this? But in 1946, it was handed over to the safekeeping of the National Trust. And it's been a national treasure ever since, and a perfect location for period filmmakers.
Right, continue.
I was going to say again, sir, how very unexpected your arrival was. If we had known you were to be here, we should not have dreamt of invading your privacy. The housekeeper assured us you would not be here until tomorrow.
I beg you do not make yourself uneasy. I had planned it so myself, but I found I had business with my steward and so rode on ahead of the rest of the party without informing anyone. They will join me tomorrow. And among them are those who claim an acquaintance with you. It's Mr. Bingley and his sisters.
Well, such was the success of Pride and Prejudice that the number of visitors here soared more than fourfold. But that's just a part of a growing love affair between Cheshire and the silver screen, as Tony Morris has been finding out.
Miss Bennett, please allow me to apologise for not receiving you properly just now. You were not leaving.
Lyme Park in Cheshire, the setting for the BBC's production of Pride and Prejudice.
You're not displeased with Pemberley?
No, not at all.
It's just one of a growing number of films being made in the county, which is bidding to become a centre of excellence in the film industry. In Warrington, filmmakers are making use of this former sports centre. Shooting starts in a few weeks' time on a comedy called The Parole Officer, starring Steve Coogan. Just a few months ago, it was also the venue for the filming of There's Only One Jimmy Grimble, a movie about football with the Full Monty star Robert Carlyle.
You're on.
What?
Ease off. You're on.
Down in Elstree, you've got your Star Wars, and Full Monty was made up in the north, but there is so much talent, not only on the acting side, but on the production side, that this is ideal and has become almost a jewel in the crown of the northwest film industry.
The BBC clearly saw Cheshire's potential years ago, Lyme Park also being the setting for this 1964 production of Sherlock Holmes. Now, in an attempt to cash in on the county's celluloid leanings, a film office is opening dedicated to wooing filmmakers to the region.
Within Cheshire, you've got such a variety of landscapes and backdrops for films. You have industrial landscapes, some of the best countryside in England.
The plan is for the film office to be located here in Frodsham, and it'll be up and running hopefully by the autumn. Staff then have the task of trying to persuade directors like Steven Spielberg, Anthony Minghella or Sam Mendes to make their blockbusters here in leafy Cheshire. And if it looks like this, they probably won't need much convincing.
Tony Morris reporting there on Cheshire's pulling power in the world of film. Now, Diane is with some of today's visitors.
Well, the gardens are normally closed at this time of day, so we're really lucky to be allowed to be in here at this time, and we're also enjoying some evening sunshine. This immaculately dressed lady doesn't look the hiking type, but you like to come here to walk, don't you,
Yes,
Jenny?
I'm not dressed for it tonight, but I really do enjoy walking in the park. It's a great place to relax.
It is. There's absolutely miles, and you come a lot.
Usually at least 3 or 4 times a year in school holidays, because I teach.
Right. Well, talking about little ones, Sandy's here with her girls. Have you had a good day today?
Yeah, fantastic, as usual.
Do you come often?
Well, I live away from here now, but I grew up in Marple and spent half my childhood here. So I'm showing my kids what I had when I was little.
Have you been around the house?
No, I haven't been around the house, no. But
Never?
No, I don't know
Isn't
why.
that funny? You grew up in the area.
Yeah.
Oh, you must come, because I went round it yesterday and it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, Stuart's here with his boys as well. You're local, aren't you, Stuart?
Yeah, I'm only from down the road at Disley, yeah.
Do you know how lucky you are to have this on your doorstep?
It sinks in gradually, doesn't it? But yeah, very lucky, aren't you?
And how often do you come?
About 2-3 times a week.
Really?
Yeah.
And do you enjoy yourself? Yeah, you do. Well, it's lovely to see you all here. Now, Maureen is slightly different. She visits regularly, but she is a volunteer. What made you want to volunteer to work here, Maureen?
Well, I retired early, and I'd always enjoyed gardening, so I thought, right, I'll ask if they want any help, and they did.
And you do a fantastic job in the garden.
So I do 2 days a week.
Now, Can I ask you what your garden's like at home? Is it as good as this?
No.
Well, the reason I asked that is because North West Tonight is starting a brand new feature and we'd love you to get involved. Do you have an unusual garden? Not a stunning garden. This has to be something a little bit different. If you do, we'd love to come down and film it. You need to call us on our usual number, which is 0845 30 630 27, or you can email us and we'll come down and take a look. Now, Stuart, what's your garden like?
Well, it's all right, but I've got a mole that's trying to wreck my lawn at the minute. Don't know what to do about it. Now, with nearly 1,400 acres to manage, I bet there's a few moles here, but there's certainly much more to Lyme Park than meets the eye. It started life as a medieval deer park, and today 2 herds roam the estate. Looking after them is just one of the challenges for the team that has to manage the estate. Here's our environment correspondent, Colin Sykes.
Originally a medieval deer park, Lyme is now home to more than 400 red and fallow deer. The red herd are descendants of animals who roamed the royal hunting forest of Macclesfield in the Middle Ages. Lyme Hall was a popular destination for stag hunting. Here in the stag parlour at the hall, the gentlemen would retire for port after a day's hunting on the estate. Today the stags are protected rather than hunted, but the 2 herds do need quite a lot of management. In the shadow of the cage, a restored hunting lodge, Marcus Halliwell stalks the deer with conservation in mind. He wants to limit their movement in order to allow an area of ancient woodland to re-establish itself.
We have to keep the deer out of there, because if they're allowed to go through there as they are now, they will actually eat all the young saplings.
Volunteers are slowly rebuilding a dry stone wall high enough to keep the deer out so the woodland can grow.
Behind us you'll see a bank which has been partially fenced, and the regeneration in 3 years is quite phenomenal, really.
One unusual feature in the wall will be a deer leap. It'll act like a one-way valve, allowing animals to get out but not be able to jump back in.
These are higher than normal because it's to stop the deer jumping over. You see the sheep walls round about and they think, oh, we think they're pretty sort of petty, you know, we're not very bothered about those, but this is pretty high.
With the 2 herds no longer at risk from the hunter, they're still attracting a lot of attention, but this time from people who simply want to admire these magnificent animals. Colin Sykes, North West Tonight, Lyme Park.
Now, I wonder if you've ever heard of that old Noel Coward song. I'm not going to sing, don't worry, but it goes something like, the stately homes of England, how beautiful they stand, to prove the ruling classes have still the upper hand. Stephen Adams is from the National Trust. What do you think these stately homes tell us about our society these days? Most of them are museums, aren't they?
Like you, I think I probably remember going as a child to houses like Lyme Park and Dunham Massey and thinking how utterly boring they were. But essentially, it's not about paintings or furniture or porcelain. It's really the story of the people, the families who lived in them, the families of the upper class, as you say, or more importantly, in fact, those poor people working in domestic servitude.
An upstairs, downstairs story, isn't it, really? But it is ironic, isn't it, that we come to places like this and we get all that sort of nice, nostalgic, cosy feeling, and yet most of us 100 years ago would have been the servants, wouldn't we, not the masters?
Of course we would. I mean, that's obvious, but what we've got to do is we've got to use that to our advantage. We've got to actually bring the children in, to excite them, to make them realise that. So, for example, get the children into the houses, into the kitchens, making the bread, the butter, the cheese, polishing the silver as we do in our houses.
And while we tend to associate the National Trust with these marvellous properties, you are diversifying a bit, aren't you?
Well, I mean, you've just got to look at the views behind me. That's the National Trust.
A bit of orienteering these days.
Indeed, yes, orienteering, bat walks, flora, fauna, really just involving people and meeting them and trying to engage with them and interest them.
Stephen Adams, thanks very much for joining us. A pleasure. Now, Lyme Park attracts thousands of visitors, but the National Trust always manages to make you feel as if it's still a private home. How do they do that? Diane's been on a behind-the-scenes tour of duty with the real experts.
Everything about Lyme Hall is on a grand scale. 18 breathtaking rooms are open to the public. But with up to 80,000 visitors a year, you wouldn't want to be on cleaning patrol.
The whole morning is spent doing what we call a kind of tops cleaning, where you go around with a duster folded in the National Trust correct way, of course.
Which is how?
You fold the edges in, so you've always got a pad, so you haven't got anything to knock ceramics with or anything like that.
And then you dust 18 rooms. Cleaning is a labour of love. So what exactly is Jane doing in here?
Jane's doing an in-depth clean on one of the court cupboards that we have here at Lyme. As you can see, it's a very highly carved and ornate piece of furniture.
Yes.
And you find that the dust gets ingrained in all these nooks and crevices. So Jane's using a cotton bud with a bit of furniture wax to ease out all that kind of grey dust that you can see. And then she uses the dry end of the cotton bud to remove the wax.
When you've done that, there's the vacuuming. Our dirty feet and hefty bottoms aren't the only enemy. Natural light causes problems. See how it's faded the hessian around where a picture hung. Imagine what it does to the picture itself. So you'll always find the blinds respectfully half-drawn. The clocks are a mammoth task. Winding them all takes 2 hours. As fashions changed in the 18th century, this stunning panelling had a makeover.
We have records of the equivalent of Llewellyn Bowen painting the panelling completely white.
That's criminal. Well, after seeing what it takes to keep the place, has it put me off living here? Of course not. I'd have servants to do it all. Now all I need is Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy?
You'll forgive me.
He didn't have to be like that, did he? Look, the sun's come out, and I think it's an omen for the weekend. It's a good omen, because the rain that we forecast for Saturday is moving through the region as we go through the next few hours, so the weekend doesn't look so bad at all. We've got some black clouds over there, and I think parts of Cheshire and Greater Manchester and Derbyshire could see some rain as we go through the evening, but I think eventually overnight tonight most places become dry. Maybe a shower along the coastal strip, but many places dry inland with some clear spells, and temperatures ranging between 9 and 11. Now into Saturday, and Saturday's not so bad now. It's a dry and a bright start, some nice spells of sunshine in the morning. We are forecasting showers for the afternoon across a good part of the country, but I think on Saturday afternoon many places will still stay dry.
I'm playing the old thing in my head from when we tipped out the van in front of Fresco's.
It's not a night any of us are going to forget in a hurry.
Except Dean Sykes.
What do you say?
At first, you must prove yourselves worthy by performing a very small task. Bring me the broomstick of the Witch of the West.
But if we do that, we'll have to kill it again.